I understand our senior reporter, Siphamandla Goge, can actually hear us and will be able to give us an update. Sipa, I see that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just landed there at Waterkloof.
Indeed, this marks the last arrival of the head of state of a BRICS member state. India is the last one to arrive here in South Africa. Already yesterday evening we saw the arrival of the President of the People's Republic of China, and yesterday too we saw the arrival of the Brazilian President. Earlier this morning, the Russian Federation delegation led by their foreign minister arrived here, and you will see logistics are being put in place here. The Indian delegation will disembark now. The second highest in command in South Africa, the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Paul Mashatile, is the one who's going to be welcoming the Indian delegation. As you can see, the official vehicles lining up there to basically take members of the Indian delegation led by their Prime Minister to Sentin Convention Center and surroundings. That's where later on they will be participating during the official opening and the start of the 15th BRICS Summit, which is convened in South Africa. A historic moment if you take into account that almost 4 heads of state, if I'm not mistaken here, of course excluding the president of the Russian Federation, Mr. Vladimir Putin, who couldn't attend simply because of the technicality about the outstanding warrant of arrest issued by the International Criminal Court of Justice, whereby South Africa is a signatory to the Rome Statute. Because of that, he is unable to attend. South Africa would have been obliged to effect the arrest if he touched down in South Africa, but he will be participating virtually. South Africa and India enjoy strong historical ties, cordial relations, both at a political and trade level. And I see here the Indian delegation has brought in senior leaders in terms of ranking. You've got the Prime Minister, the Foreign Affairs Minister, and this is a high-powered delegation that will be participating at this 15th BRICS Summit. So today we saw the arrival of the Russian Federation delegation. Their aeroplane is still here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. This is a very strategic area of landing, and we have seen 2 member states touching down here. The President of the People's Republic of China touched down at OR Tambo International Airport, already having engagements with the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, during his official state visit to South Africa. He will therefore later on participate at the BRICS Summit. But both leaders have talked about trade issues between South Africa and the People's Republic of China. They've also discussed the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. They share similar positions in terms of calling for peace and dialogue in ending the ongoing war that has affected the global economy in terms of trade and in terms of some countries being unable basically to get certain goods and services, and therefore there are calls for that war to come to an end soon. China at some point proposed a point plan that they said they want to see being implemented to bring about peace between Russia and Ukraine. South Africa was part of the African mission comprising of 6 countries that went to both countries, Russian Federation and Ukraine, to try and mediate, to try and talk to both leaders of Russia as well as Ukraine. But most importantly, what will be discussed at this 15th BRICS Summit is the expansion of BRICS membership. A number of countries have applied to join BRICS. Others have shown interest. President of the Republic of South Africa, together with his Chinese counterpart, both of them saying they share a similar position in supporting calls for the expansion of BRICS. India is also said to be in favor of that position. Russia is said to be supporting calls for the expansion of BRICS. There were mixed reports about Brazil, some saying, well, the country is saying, let's adopt a wait-and-see approach. Let's discuss the matter further and take it from there. So this BRICS summit will be crucial in trying to see what will be the outcome of the meeting or the summit in terms of those calls and proposals to expand BRICS membership as a bloc. It's becoming a force to be reckoned with. A number of countries that are regarded as emerging economies in the Middle East, in the African continent, have shown interest in joining BRICS. Will there be an official announcement after the 3-day summit is over to say, yes, indeed, they will be accepted as part of the BRICS bloc? We can only wait and hear once that conference is officially closed and agenda and resolutions and declarations are presented. But it will be touching on the issue of trade between BRICS membership. That will be Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, China, and also other heads of states and countries that have been invited. In total, we understand that there are about 51 or 54 heads of states and governments that are in the country that have been invited. Here in Waterkloof Air Force Base, where we are, later this evening there will be the arrival of the Cuban delegation as well as the Tanzanian delegation. Those who are familiar with South African politics and, you know, regional and continental politics as well would understand, and global politics, by the way, will understand historical ties between South Africa, Cuba and Tanzania, as we see the media contingent and the delegation from the Republic of India disembarking there using that back exit. Of course, the front exit is reserved for the leader of the delegation from the Republic of India, who's the Prime Minister of that country. It's quite a decent media delegation from the Republic of India that is here. And you look at this plane, you can tell that it's really huge, and it looks like it's full in terms of occupation or occupants. So therefore you see those delegates, members of the media and other guests of the Prime Minister of the Republic of India who are here, as well as the security forces from the Republic of India as they are taking their position there, trying to ensure that they welcome the Prime Minister who is about to disembark here. Once all the logistics have been sorted out, then they will be able to disembark. We see some high-ranking officials are already on the ground, and we await the Prime Minister of the Republic of India to disembark. India, South Africa, Russia, China, Brazil, all of them are regarded as, you know, the alternative bloc in terms of BRICS. There have been speculations and calls, many people saying this is the bloc that will basically challenge the status quo of the global superpowers and the global system dominated by the United States of America and the European Union or Western countries in terms of global economy and politics. Yes, there are those who have said that South Africa is just a small partner in terms of BRICS membership. If you take into account the population of the country, the economy of the country, South Africa is really just a small fish if you compare it with India in terms of size, population and the economy, as well as global power and influence when it comes to politics, trade and economics. But at the same time, there are those who are arguing that in Africa, as the continent, South Africa is a superpower in this continent. So therefore, the BRICS membership is strategic in a sense that South Africa has a place and a seat in the table in terms of ensuring that the country participates and basically is on equal footing. Well, not necessarily equal footing, but at least equal platform with global superpowers. China being the second biggest economy in the world, India as well as Brazil in terms of population, Russia population is big and their economy is relatively stronger compared to South Africa. But there have been concerns from economists and experts who have said that a number of economies of BRICS member states have been struggling in the past couple of years, and therefore this is very important to say what will be discussed at this summit in terms of strengthening their cooperation, trade, and reviving their economies for sustainable development. But also, if you check, there are those who have been saying this BRICS membership of South Africa is crucial, as the country is one of many in the African continent that are pushing for the reforms in the global institutions, including the World Bank, the IMF, which are dominated by the West and the United States, as well as the United Nations, which is an international global structure. South Africa has been calling for a permanent seat there in the Security Council for the African continent to be well represented in that institution. So having this partnership with powerful countries such as Russia, China, Brazil and India is very important in that regard. But this 15th BRICS Summit is also crucial in that on the agenda, member states will discuss the issue of using their local currencies when it comes to trade between and among them. A number of proposals have been put on the table to say, yes, we are BRICS member states, but we still trade in the US dollar in terms of other goods and services and commodities that we would want to see that changing using local currencies. There have been proposals also for this bloc to adopt one single currency. Some say that might take time. It might not necessarily be announced at this summit, but it's a starting point to continue with those possible discussions and talks to say, how do these countries who are members of BRICS have one common currency? Others have laughed off the idea, saying it's not practically impossible to implement and enforce. Others have said it's possible, it may take time, but you will require cooperation within and amongst BRICS member states. And as you see, a number of countries who are emerging economies showing interest in joining BRICS, you get a sense that this bloc may indeed expand in the near future. The red carpet is being rolled out for the Indian Prime Minister, who's leading his delegation from the Republic of India. He has touched down at the Waterkloof Air Force Base in Pretoria, the capital of the Republic of South Africa. The summit is taking place at Sandton Convention Center, the economic hub, Johannesburg, which is the economic hub of South Africa. The country is rolling the red carpet for guests, visitors, heads of state, and also those who have been invited by the President of the Republic of South Africa, as the country is chairing BRICS this year. More than 30 heads of state from the African continent have been invited. South Africa taking a posture and a position that says it would like to see this being an African summit. Hence, you will see on the agenda of this 15th BRICS Summit, there is an item that deals specifically with fostering relations, strengthening those cooperations and collaborations between Africa, BRICS member states, and other like-minded countries. So Africa as a continent will take center stage here. Africa as a continent will be well represented not only by South Africa, but by a number of presidents, prime ministers, and heads of governments and delegations that will be taking part. Also on the sidelines, there will be a lot of bilaterals and discussions, engagements, lobbying that will be taking place. A cultural event will be performed here at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. As you see, the diversity of South Africa. South Africans from different nations and groups will be performing here, rendering cultural items. This is about showcasing the country's unity in diversity. South Africa is a diverse country with a number of nations and groups. They will be showcasing, some of them will be showcasing that diversity here and the beauty of South Africa's culture, the beauty of South Africa as a rainbow nation. And this is a welcome that is accorded to the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, who has touched down in South Africa, and he will receive all the military honors and all the diplomatic accolades that will be afforded to him, as he will be welcomed by the second in command, the Deputy President of the Republic, Mr. Paul Mashatile. I see here also on the delegation that is here on my right, I see there is Ambassador Sibundebele, who's South Africa's ambassador to India. He's former ambassador to Australia and also the former Minister of Transport, former Minister of Correctional Services, former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. There is Minister Mondli Gungubele there, and there is that's part of the South African delegation. As we see the country's number 2, Mr. Paul Mashatile, will be coming on my left. Joe Komane will show you as he crosses and as he makes his way across to officially welcome the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, Prime Minister Modi, who has touched down here. Minister Gungubele, Ambassador Sibundebele, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, all making their way there to ensure that they welcome and receive the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, a country that has got strong historical ties with South Africa, both in terms of politics but in terms of trade and the economy. This gathering, the 15th BRICS Summit here, is about trade, is about ensuring fostering of relations between two sister countries with strong historical ties, but also not only South Africa alone. There is Russia, there is Brazil, there is India, there is China. As we see that it's all systems go now for the Prime Minister of the Republic of India to disembark here. Prime Minister Modi is about to disembark. We are waiting for him to just come out of that plane. They will extend pleasantries and warm welcomes with the Deputy President of the Republic, and then after that he will head to his area of residence or accommodation together with his delegation, just to freshen up a bit before, of course, later on in the afternoon heading to the Sentin Convention Center, which is a hive of activity in terms of security. Everything there is on lockdown or on shutdown. You would understand. You have a number of heads of state who are attending there. Yesterday I attended a parade by the Minister of Police, General Bheki Cele, together with the National Commissioner of Police, General Fani Masemula, who said they are not taking any chances. They would ensure that every head of state who is here is safe, and this is the vehicle, the official vehicle that the Prime Minister of India will be ushered into. It's taking its position here. It's got the flag of India. Joe Komane will show you those visuals as the car is taking its rightful position there. When the Prime Minister of the Republic of India disembarks, he will be greeted by the Deputy President. After a few exchanges in terms of greetings and welcomes, then he will be ushered into that vehicle that Joe Komane is showing you. After that, it will all be to the Sentin Convention Center or to his holding area while he awaits to join other heads of state. He will be accorded an opportunity, just like his fellow heads of states from BRICS member states, who will be given about 10 minutes to make their inputs and contributions when the President of the Republic of South Africa has officially opened the 15th BRICS Summit. They will deliver their statements on this summit, making and summarizing their country's positions. But in a nutshell, all those statements will be focusing on strengthening cooperation and trade between BRICS member states. It's all systems go here. As you can see that they are taking their positions, lining up for the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, Prime Minister Modi, to disembark. One of the things that is notable about his arrival is that his flight was on time. He was set to touch down at 13:35, and indeed by 13:33 he was on the ground, and it was a very smooth arrival in terms of time and logistics, and it was expected that by this time he would have landed. So he is the last head of state in terms of BRICS member states to arrive in South Africa, and this simply means that all members of the BRICS bloc have touched down in South Africa. The Russian Federation, whose plane is still here, by the way, at Waterkloof, will be represented by their foreign minister in the absence of their president, Mr. Vladimir Putin, who will participate participate virtually, who will lead his country in making his country's statement about this BRICS Summit, and most importantly, putting forward the Federation's position in terms of, as we see, there is some movement there. We expect the Prime Minister of the Republic of India to disembark now as he has arrived in South Africa, Masego.
Visuals until the Prime Minister, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi comes out of that plane. If you've just joined us, it is at the Waterkloof Air Force Base in the capital in Pretoria, where the Prime Minister has just landed. And as you heard from Siphamandla Goge, my colleague who's on the ground, the Prime Minister of India is the last of the BRICS nations to arrive or to land here in South Africa. And Siphamandla Goge also just telling us that there would be at some point, there he is in fact coming out of the plane. He will be received by Deputy President Paul Mashatile. Siphamandla Goge and Jogomani, his colleague behind the camera, showing us a little earlier on the Deputy President Paul Mashatile coming closer, along with Minister of Communications, that's Mondli Gungubele, and the Ambassador to India, that's Sbu Ndebele. He'll be shaking hands there, as you can see. I'm not sure if you can see properly, but the person who's appearing just next to the South African flag there is the second in command to South Africa. There he is, Paul Mashatile, receiving the Prime Minister of India. And as Siphamandla Goge had just told us, he will be taken into a vehicle and then driven to the Sandton Convention Centre. There he is greeting the Ambassador of South Africa to India, Sbu Ndebele there. He'll be taken to the Sandton Convention Centre, where the BRICS Summit is expected to start at 4 o'clock, with the opening by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who currently is wrapping up his hosting of his Chinese counterpart, that is President Xi Jinping, just a few kilometers away from the Waterkloof Air Force Base. In fact, that meeting and hosting between the two heads of state happening at the Union buildings. There you go, the cultural items that are being rendered there by different cultures. You see Ndebele, the women who are coming forward is the Ndebele culture. You identify them with the colorful blankets. Let's just listen in to the natural sound coming from there. All right. So if you've just joined us, that is the Indian Prime Minister touching down in South Africa. This is at the Waterkloof Air Force Base, the vehicle that is moving at the moment. He just went into one of those vehicles, the Presidential Protection Unit vehicles that will drive him from the capital straight to the Sandton Convention Centre. I think at some point, if there is time, because there's just less than 2 hours until the BRICS Summit officially is opened by President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Sandton Convention Centre. Maybe the Prime Minister will first start at his hotel to drop off his bags and probably just freshen up after his long flight before heading off to the opening of the BRICS Summit. It's a 3-day summit that is expected to start at 4 o'clock today to conclude on Thursday. Very important between all 5 BRICS nations in terms of diplomatic ties, bilateral relations, the strengthening of that. You see Paul Mashatile, the second in command, who is the one who received the Prime Minister of India. In the middle there, laughing with the president, is the ambassador to India, that is Sibundebele, the communications minister and former minister in the presidency, Mondli Gungubele, also accompanying the government delegation that welcomed the very last head of state to arrive from all BRICS nation at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. A little earlier on, we were live for you at the Union Buildings in Pretoria, where President Cyril Ramaphosa was hosting one of the presidents in the BRICS nation. That is the president of the People's Republic of China. That is President Xi Jinping. Those are visuals from earlier at the Union Buildings as the president welcomed, or rather, this is actually live. Basically, that meeting between the two heads of state just concluding. We saw some of the ministers from the different countries, the 2 countries rather, signing agreements. What I found important are the signing of 2 ministries in terms of the ministers that signed agreements between China and South Africa, and that was the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Bladen Zimande, signing off there some of the plans that we have between South Africa and China. You might remember last week a meeting between BRICS education ministers from all 5 nations took place, and they actually announced that they would form their own international standings when it comes to universities here in South Africa, so that we are rated, or we rate ourselves. This, of course, coming from Moscow, because it believes that its university is not being ranked by the international world at the moment, because it feels as though, or Russia feels as though, it's been counted out. And of course, another minister that was important, of course, was the electricity minister, Ramokgopa. We know that China has also had its own energy issues. A lack of coal in 2020 resulted in factories actually going out of power for a certain period, a shorter period to what we experience here in South Africa. But nonetheless, they also have power issues. At some point in 2022, their hydropower output was also lacking, and therefore it meant that there was a lack of power being produced in China at some point. So that agreement will be very important to see how they can help us, especially because they have a coal shortage and we have a high supply of coal, besides what you think in terms of what we term here in South Africa the coal mafia.